Hello, everybody. Welcome to an unexpected podcast. Today on the podcast, we've got Devin in DC, we've got Evan in Ireland, we've got Alisher down in Philadelphia. And today we're going to do another How to Beat a Certain List episode. We did one of these with the Legion of the Dragon Emperor. Today's episode is going to be on the Pits of Dol Guldur, which is another legendary legion that's been showing up a lot on top tables. And Evan, who has used the Pits of Dol Guldur quite a bit, he's going to be presenting his list and kind of talking through how it works. And then Devin, Alisher, and I are each going to present a super secret list that we have designed specifically to beat the Pits of Dol Guldur. And after that, we're going to vote to see who has the best chance of doing that. And in a different episode coming in the future, we are going to fight it out on a not a virtual tabletop, but we're going to fight it out on a picture and talk through how that battle would have gone and decide between us who we think would have emerged victorious. Okay, so this is a list from Mick Duholm. All right, if I mispronounce it, I apologize. But he has kind of he has an interesting list, one that we haven't kind of seen a variant of in a little while. And this is Dark Powers of Dol Guldur, Azog's Hunters without an Azog in it. So I thought this would be kind of an interesting list to go through here. Now, one thing that's not specified here is how many points this is. Anybody want to take a stab at this, at how many points this is? It's got 47. All right. Well, I'll go through the list, then we can decide how many points we think.
700 looks
700 to 750.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Because the heroes are so cheap.
yeah.
Ev, do you have Army Builder up?
I do.
If you want to talk.
I'm just trying to let's see. So the heroes in total are 300 points.
Yeah.
Basically.
So 700.
Yeah, something like that. And then Hunter Orcs are 8 each. So 12 would be roughly 100 points. So that's then 120 from those two warbands. So that's like 520. And then 2 more warbands. 700 sounds right. Maybe 750.
All right.
With the banner, hold on. 700 points.
Okay.
That's what I'm settling on.
700
Most likely
points.
700.
All right. Well, this is a pretty for a 700-ish army. This is a pretty hefty model count with 47 models, 8 bows, 8 might. For those of you at home, there are 5 warbands here. There is first warband is helmed by the Lingering Shadow. And with it has 4 Hunter Orcs and 4 Gundabad warriors. 1 has a banner, 3 have shields, and 3 have spears. All of them have shields. And then 1 fell warg, just for a little bit of running quickly. Then we have the Witch King. And the Witch King has 1 Hunter Orc with a 2-handed pick, 3 Hunter Orcs, 3, and then 4 Gundabads. 1 has a spear and a shield. 3 have spear and shield, and then 1, I guess, to save a point, has just a spear. And also 1 fell warg added in. Then we've got a Castellan of Dol Guldur with a Morgul Blade, and he's got 3 Gundabad orcs with spear and shield, and 3 with shield. Another Castellan of Dol Guldur with a Morgul Blade with 3 spear Gundabads and 3 shield Gundabads. And then last, we have Thimble the Hunter with Fell Warg. And he's got 6 Hunter Orcs with Orc Bow, 4 Hunter Orcs, and 2 Fell Wargs. So come out at 47 models, which is a healthy number of models, and 8 bows and 8 might. So what are people's thoughts on this particular list?
I like it. I think it's a well-balanced list. There's certain things, like, having played the game I guess as long as I have, I feel like there are certain trends that I see a lot with like various. So this is a list where I feel like the heroes support the army more than the army supports the heroes, which kind of like opens, and you all of course can disagree with that sentiment, but like I feel like if you play against an army that has like some big heroes, it's very possible that they just get rolling, and because your heroes are so small in nature, like they're not going to be able to do very much against it. Now, does the Lingering Shadow have strike, or is it just the Witch King and Thimble?
They both do.
They both
The
have
Lingering
it.
Shadow and the
So
Witch King
having
and Thimble.
having three strikers is nice, but at the same time, like they're all fight 5. Like if you're playing against, any of the big heroes that you see a lot these days, Aragorn, Elendil, Azog, Bolg even, there's not much that's going to stop them outside of the hope that they botch a fight roll.
Yes. I don't know. I guess I'm of a little bit of a different opinion about this whole list. I think the lack of March, I think the fact that all of his heroes are to attack.
Thimble has March, right?
Oh,
I
no.
can check. Continue your thought while I check.
Well,
doesn't.
yeah, check.
He
Yeah.
doesn't.
Oh, okay. Well then,
Look,
yeah.
March isn't super important, but I mean, it's just a lack of that. He has no mobility at all. Felwark. Sorry, he has 4.
Well, and
So,
Fimble's
okay.
on Felwark.
Yeah, it's true.
He has,
So
Is the Lingering the one that like
March
does
isn't
the extra
super
move?
important then. I guess he has also no might is my other issue. That's why I'd rather have Hunter captains than Castellans, because like to be honest, the Wraiths usually save their at least 1 might for a resurrection. So you're really looking at 2 points of might plus Thimble. So like Fimble's carrying the team on the heroic action side.
Remember, the Witch King has 3.
Well, yeah, but they usually save 1 for resurrections.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, like
Okay,
you could just go. You
the Lingering
could go
Shadow
hell.
the Lingering Shadow has 2, so I think he's got, even if he saves 1 on each of those guys for resurrection, he's got
3 points of might plus Fimble,
3 off of them, and then Fimble, who's got
which is 6 in a 700 point list. Normally, it's 1 per 100 is the average. I think he's low on might. I in low on, like, the army actually has to kill. Like I know Alice was saying that the heroes are going to do a lot of the killing here, but I actually think the army is
No.
really.
It's the other way around.
Okay. You do.
The heroes
Okay.
support the army, not the army supporting the heroes.
Okay. Then yes, I would 100% agree with that. I actually do still think though that Hunter captains would be a better option than Castellans. Castellans are a great doorstop. You throw them up against a charging Azog or something, and okay, fantastic. They're not going down anytime soon, except for through extremely bad dice rolling, which I have seen on Castellans. But I don't know. Maybe I'd trade 1 Castellan for a Hunter captain. And then the other one can be that doorstop against like an Aragorn or something, because that's what I see Castellans as. I don't see them as killers. They're just doorstops against heroes. And then, of course, the Morgul Braid presence is a threat, but I don't know. That's the way I see them. Otherwise, yeah, the army has a lot of work cut out for it. So, and the heroes are not going to do a lot to help, other than Lingering Shadow harassing, Witch King. I don't know. 2 attacks with strength 4, 5/5. Like, I mean, you're a captain. You're like banking on captains going around doing anything. Like, I mean, I'm not really.
Well, he's also banking on 40, a 40 model battle line with Hunter Orcs in front and Gundabad's behind.
Yeah, it's just the army is by itself. Like it's supported. Look, I love Lingering Shadow. I love the Witch King and all that. Like, I do actually like the heroes, but I just feel like there's no major threat except for the army itself.
Yeah.
So
the big hero's just gonna roll through. If they get going, they're just gonna keep going, I think.
Well, I mean, I do like the idea of the 2 Castellans as a counter to the big hero, because they're slow, but you can kind of like put 1 on the right, 1 on the left, and whichever way the big hero goes, the Castellan's job is just to charge into that big hero.
Yeah.
And say, I will now stall you for the rest of the game. Which is not actually a bad counter to big scary hero.
I guess I often like to have 3 major threats. and I see basically one, which is the army. And so there's no other major threat. So then I guess the combined weight of all the heroes might be two, but not really. And you have lack of heroic moves. That's just I do not. I think Dark Powers by itself just really lacks that serious threat, which is why I often, when I play it, I like to usually ally it with Azog's Hunters or Legion. But which can it? Is it allowed to do that?
Yeah.
You can do a
Yeah.
three-way alliance with them if you want.
Yeah. So, but other than that, otherwise, though, the list is fun. Okay. I do not think this is a bad list by any means. So, all of everything I just set aside, I don't think it's a terrible list. I just wouldn't go to Articon with it. That's my fault.
Yeah, I've seen lists like this before. And I think the problem with this one is it's not capitalizing on the things you want to capitalize with this list. And I think this list, the plan of this list is to kill the enemy before they kill you. And in that way, you remove the heroes going crazy problem and killing your entire army without you being able to do everything by just killing them faster than you do. So I would say go heavier on the Hunter Orcs is my big piece of advice. Um, in the Pits of Dol Guldur list, you can afford to go less heavy just because you can rely on Azog to do a lot of the killing and then be less reliant on your battle line, but especially because this list is bigger and by a decently significant margin. I think that just leaning on your orcs, taking maybe say a 66% hunter orcs to 33% gun to bats is going to be a much nicer split. And it means that you have redundancy in the sense that once your hunter orcs start dying, you can just put more hunter orcs in and you can really get those two attacks in there. Because the way this list likes to play is it heroic marches up, which is one thing we need to fix, and then it surrounds the opponent with a lot of maneuverability, which this list doesn't really have. And then it uses its hunter orcs to just grind down the opponent before the opponent can grind down them, even with their heroes. So I think in order to make this list fulfill this game plan, you need to drop the Castellans, maybe even drop one of the Nazguls of Dol Guldur, and then take another Azog's Hunters warband and then an Azog's Legion warband. And I know this changes the heroes a lot. It doesn't change the warriors a lot. But I think something like Fimble and Yazneg for Azog's Hunters, just a generic Gundabad Orc captain for Azog's Legion to get the march, and then the Witch King. I think you take those models and then you just fill up with guys. And then you can also afford to get a ton of models and get some extra stuff that you want to get. Like you can take a couple of war bats, which are extremely useful to be able to get behind the enemy to pluck out certain targets. And if a hero is on foot, you can just hit them and possibly knock them prone, and that will mitigate them a little bit. Obviously, it doesn't work for mounted models, but it's still good. Maybe you take one or two Mirkwood spiders, which can shoot their paralyzes into combat and try and take out heroes that way. And in general, you can also grab a Warhorn, which I think this list needs. Because with Pits of Dol Guldur, at least Azog's courage is okay that he can lead into these terror-causing armies, but you really need a Warhorn for this list, especially when it breaks, because you don't have Azog's massive standfast when it breaks. Everything's going to run when it breaks, so you need that Warhorn to be able to keep things alive. And in general, if you take a list like that with 4 heroes instead of 5, and all 4 of those heroes being high on might, You'll have more might points to spend. You'll have a march in there. You'll have a lot more auxiliary units like bats and spiders and maybe a couple more felwargs to be able to surround better, to be able to do cool and fun things. You'll have more hunter orcs to be able to kill people quickly. I think a list like that will perform a lot better and will most likely perform in the way you want this list to perform. So I know I'm suggesting some very radical hero changes and some decently big warrior changes as well. But I think if you want to maximize an army like this, you want to make those changes.
I think it's called for. I don't think 5 war bands is necessary. And 2, like, I don't understand the focus on Guldur, because you don't even benefit from like the pure bonus of Guldur. So 2 rates isn't really necessary. There's a better 75 points to spend than a second Wraith.
So if you wanted to do kind of less surgery on this list, I think this list would be kind of improved if you just deleted one of the Castellans and replaced it with a Hunter or a Captain. And that gives you the march. And I think this list is going to need a march to get closer in the face of shooting. That still leaves you with the courage deficit. I mean, if you wanted to, you could drop both Castellans, put one Hunter Orc Captain, and then use some points to get a Warhorn in there.
Yeah.
As well as maybe an extra guy or 2. That would be a way to do it. And that'd, kind of solve 2 of your problems. I do kind of like the idea of the Castellan as the tank in this particular list to deal with the big super killy hero. So, it kind of depends whether you want to kind of keep that gimmick in the list. You've also got enough figures here, particularly at 700 points. So you could just drop some figures if you wanted to and get a Warhorn in here and keep one of the Castellans.
Yeah, I think the concern with dropping figures is you're relying so much on your warriors to do the damage that you really want to make this list maybe not a full horde, but at least a semi-horde to be able to take some damage from heroes and still be able to have the hitting power to beat through the army.
Yeah, but there's some stuff you could drop. You could drop the 2-handed pit. I think probably with if you drop maybe 3 Gundabads or transition some Gundabads to cheaper Hunter Orcs, and then drop some extra stuff like the 2-handed picks. Maybe dropped a couple bows, maybe dropped a Felwarg. You could probably get a Warhorn in here without doing too heavy a hit to the model count.
Yeah, I mean it's perfectly feasible. I think what we're all agreed on is that we want some form of march in there, right?
Yep. That's right.
And then we probably want to get the Warhorn in at some point. You could, I think I would personally prefer dropping the other Castellan as well and just getting the Warhorn in there. And then maybe filling out a bit more on models and then making a more well-rounded list in that way. But you can keep the Castellan and drop something else.
Right.
Obviously, the big sweeping changes I recommended earlier is how I would optimize the list and how I would think it would perform best. But I think just making those smaller changes is going to make a big difference. And I still recommend taking a higher Hunter Orc to Gundabad Orc ratio.
All right, fair enough. Well, we have about 15 minutes left before we get to the 2-hour mark. So do we have time to do one more here? Because we haven't done lists in a while.
I will not be able to go above 2 hours. So just a heads up if I have to drop off.
Let's see if we can do let's see if we can do Sharby 9540's list. pretty quickly. Although I do see something from Bilbo Swaggins, and I really do like that name. So this is a so this is a choice here. So maybe we can go through, talk about this a little bit, and then just decide which of the two choices he gave us we would want to do. So this is based on a core of Watcher in the Water and Durbers, and this appears to be a 700 point list. And he says the core at 375 points is Durbers, the Watcher in the Water, 14 goblins with spear, and a bat. So it's the infamous Watcher and Bat combo with some goblins with spears to back it up. And then he has two 325 point options here. Option number one is the Spider Queen, a Goblin Captain, a Goblin Shaman, a Bat Swarm, a Giant Spider, and 15 goblins, 14 with shields, one with bow. And then the second one is an alternative 324 point option, which is the Witch King on horse with crown. He's a 3-10-2 Witch King, 15 Black Numenorians, 2 Warg Riders, and 1 Morannon with shield speared and banner. So between these two, all right. So in the interest of time, what we're going to do is you may only choose one of these two options. You cannot tinker with them. So between these two options that Sharby 9540 has given us, which do you prefer and why? You can put Evan on the spot. Evan, which do you prefer and why?
I don't like either of these options.
That's not a
I think
choice.
just at 700, Pure Moria is just so much better. I think these choices are much better at 800 plus. But anyways, if I were to pick one of these options, I would take the second one. Because they both average a similar model count, which is about 35 to 40. Which means for that first list, it is going to crumple because it's 35 or 40 goblins, and goblins do not survive much of anything, which means you're relying very much on your relatively unreliable tentacle monster and your extremely unreliable creepy crawly spider, which I don't like. I think with the Watcher, you want to be able to last a long time so the Watcher can really get use out of its tentacles. And the Witch King with Black Numenorians is just going to last so much longer and be able to facilitate the Watcher better. Obviously, again, Pure Moria with like 50 models, I think is going to last even longer than that, but that's not an option. So I would say the second one, and maybe if you can try and figure out a way to get a couple more will points on the Witch King because he's a little bit low on them.
All right, let's go to Devin since he has a little more time pressure. Devin, what's your thought?
You should have thrown in Azog. I'm not liking either of these up. No, I'm kidding.
He needs a bomb. He needs a bomb.
The bomb. For the same reasons Evan mentioned, at 700 points, I would have to say the second option just because 30 goblins. But between the two, I think if you want more fun, I think the first option is more entertaining. Just having those two rampaging around would be a lot more fun. Also, some things to consider about the first option. The Watcher doesn't really want to deploy until like you're in proper position. The fact that you do have more might, march, you have the more might march. As crazy as it sounds, I would end up playing the first option and trying to make that work. But the second one is much safer. A defense 6 front line to allow you to, for all the reasons that Evan stated. The second option is more strategic, but knowing me and my gimmicks, I would probably try the first one.
All right. So Devin's going with the first one. Evan's going with the second one.
Please note this is coming from a man that takes Guldur and Azog in the same list.
Yeah. Alisher.
Yeah, just to be really brief, I agree with a lot of what Devin says. I think the first option is considerably more fun. The second option, it's trying to optimize in a way that you're not really even benefiting from. So like you're going to end up kind of making yourself and your opponent miserable in such a way that's not even necessarily resulting in, and I use miserable lightly. Obviously this is a game, but
Just lightly miserable.
just lightly miserable. And I know a lot about that.
It's not a Salt on Helm's Deep level of
No,
miserable.
no.
It's
So like
just
this isn't
just a
like
moderate.
ridiculous, but it's like you're going through a bunch of hassle to like optimize a list in this very specific way of like the Witch King Black Numenorian combo. And it's not exactly like it's going to result in the greatest of competitive returns. So if you're like, and I don't know what type of player you are, if you're wanting to go to an event and have a good time and maybe win some games, the first option is your go-to. The second option is not going to produce that much better of a result for you, even though on paper it is more optimized. So like for me personally, I really don't like Wraith Black Numenorian combo from a fun perspective, like me playing it. So I would not play the second. I could see playing the first 100% at an event.
So I would like to add in quickly that at a recent GBHL event, David Farmer won a 1,000 point tournament with a list with the Watcher in it that also had, I think, the Witch King, Shadow Lord, Spider Queen, and a bunch of Black Numenorians. And I think
I get the
that's
Witch
why
King,
my
Spider Queen, and the Watcher in a list.
yeah. At
Yeah,
1,000
very
points, you
fun.
definitely
Oh,
can.
1,000. Oh,
Yeah.
1,000. Sorry. All right. I missed that somehow.
Yeah. And I think this is definitely a combo that works a lot better at higher points. And I think 700 points is a little too low to try and go for like an additional hitter plus the Watcher. That's why I recommended the Pure Moria so much. But I think definitely if you want to have fun, the Spider Queen Watcher list is going to give you more fun.
And to Evan's point, like I've played the Watcher. The Watcher is a very, very fun model to play. You don't need anything more than Moria. Like you don't need a Spider Queen to have a good time with the Watcher and play competitively.
So of these two choices, I think my clear choice is the second one. You know, for those who don't know, and we may have like made some assumptions here, the tactic with the Watcher and the Bat is that you have a battle line. You bring the Watcher in behind your secure battle line with a Bat next to him, and the Watcher then proceeds to pluck every hero that your opponent has one at a time over the battle line and into your Bat and your Watcher, and basically kill them all sequentially. And you know, in my mind, the battle line is far more secure with Black Numenorians backed up by a Witch King than it is with just goblins. And because the goblins can get kind of carved through before the Watcher can show up or take out all the heroes that it needs to take out. So I think my pick for the record is also the second option along with Evan. And I really could care less about making my opponents miserable. So
as the world knows.
As someone who just took a like 16 Black Numenorian Mordor army to the Dutch GT, I definitely enjoy making my opponents miserable too.
Yep. So I think we're going to call it there, especially since I've got an opponent coming over in 15 minutes against him. I will be taking Army of the Dead. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway,
is he playing Pits of Dol Guldur though?
Probably not. He's typically a Mordor player, but we'll see if he's pulling something new out of the bag. So let's talk about the Pits of Dol Guldur. And so I think Evan doesn't have the book in front of him. I do have the book in front of me. So I think I'm going to just talk through the what's in the Pits of Dol Guldur, and then you can kind of discuss a bit about how it works and then talk about your list. Will that work? All right. For those of you who are listening, Evan is nodding. please say yes.
I also responded.
Okay. But please make your answers verbal. It's easier for the stenographer. Okay. So the Pits of Dol Guldur. The Pits of Dol Guldur must include Azog, who is always the army's leader. You can get Azog at 165 points, and of course, you can buy him the White Ward for 50 more. The other heroes you can take with this are somewhat limited. You can take the Keeper of the Dungeons at 75 points, who's in an interesting ad. You can take the Gundabad Orc Captain, who's fairly straightforward. You could buy him a shield if you want. You can also take a Hunter Orc Captain the Gundabad Orc Captain is 50 points, 5 more if you buy him the shield. The Hunter Orc Captain is 45 points, and you can put him on a Fel Warg if you want for 10 points. And you can give him an Orc Bow for 5 points, a two-handed pick for 5 points. Not really that you would ever consider either of those options. And then rounding it out for the heroes, you can have Thrain the Broken, who presents a nice, interesting randomization option that you can throw into this list. Throw him into his own warband, drop him somewhere, put him on an objective, and hope he doesn't just wander away at the critical moment. Always an interesting time with Thrain the Broken. I have seen him do some interesting things, like on an objective, for example, turning around and like killing the other guy who is protecting the objective for his player and surrendering the objective at the end of the game. But he's fun. He's fun to play with. For warriors, you can get Gundabad Orc warriors at 5 points a pop. You can give them banners. You can give them shields. You can give them spears. Then there's Hunter Orcs. If you want to put a Warhorn in this army, and maybe you do, that's 30 points. You can also give them a banner at 25, and you can put them on Fel Wargs, give them an Orc Bow, or give them a two-handed pick. And you can also, if you want some faster moving options, just put Fel Wargs at 8 points a pop in this Legendary Legion. So the special rules for this Legion are threefold. There is the dreaded surprise attack special rule. So once per game, before a priority is determined, so long as he is alive and on the battlefield, Azog can declare that he is using this ability. If he does, do not roll for a priority. Instead, Azog's controlling player will automatically win the priority roll. Additionally, enemy models may not declare heroic moves in the following move phase. So essentially, Azog can say, I go first, period, full stop, end of sentence. And once he does that, Azog goes first. Can be a very useful rule to use at a critical point in the game when you can either take out somebody's critical hero with Azog, or if you just need on the first turn of a game where you're starting right in somebody's face to make sure you get lined up in the ideal attacks that you want, that is an option for you. The second special rule is Magical Void. Friendly models gaining resistant to magic special rule, so everything gets a little tougher to cast spells on, in particular Azog himself, because if he's on the White Warg, he's got 4 will. And lastly, the Fury of the Pale Orc. Azog may declare a heroic combat each turn without spending might. So Azog becomes Elendil and gets free heroic combats every turn he wants. Now, something that's important to keep in mind with this list is, because this list is not Azog's Legion, there is no Master of Battle for Azog. So Azog has traded Master of Battle for the ability to call free heroic combats. The other thing to keep in mind is that Azog's only option is the White Warg, which means that he cannot get the flail. He doesn't have the ability to kind of go two-handed and fight 6 and just wallop everybody that's around him. He just has his sword. So he just has the ability to use his strength 5. So Evan, have I missed anything? And if so, if not, tell us how this army gets used.
No, you have not missed anything. So, yeah, do you want me to go over my list first and then talk about it, or just talk generally about the army first?
Why don't you talk generally about the army, and then
Yeah, sure.
you can explain how your list.
Tournaments have you played this list in so far?
I have played it in 2 tournaments. One of which was a year and a half ago, something like that. I think it was at a Pennsylvania one, which I came first in, and then the other one was Nova Open, where I came second. So it's definitely a reliable army, that's for sure. So just going over the list in general, obviously your main piece is going to be Azog. He's an Elendil with 6 might that doesn't have the +1 to wound and is a lot squishier in the sense that he's defense 5 and can't boost that defense. But especially at lower points like 650, he's extremely hard to stop. You're not going to have a lot of magic at 650, and even if you have maybe one or maybe two smaller casters, it's not going to be enough because he has 6 might, 4 will because of the White Warg, and resistant to magic. So really your only method of killing him is going to be shooting, and that's extremely unreliable, especially when he's behind 2 or 3 ranks of guys as you go in. And then you really, really struggle to kill him. You basically have to go in for 50-50 strike offs. And if that doesn't work, he just kills you because he wounds you on 3s. And on top of that, a lot of people focus on Azog a lot, but I don't think enough people focus on the rest of the army. Because Hunter Orcs are ludicrous. When they're backed up by Gun to Bads, you get 3 attacks. If you've got a banner in there, you get an additional attack on that. And if they win the fight, they're strength 4, and there's not a lot of defense 7 at 650, just because you run into numbers issues if you take high points models. Which means that on average, if you win a fight, you are generally most likely going to kill that guy. In addition, just being able to take a lot of models. For example, 650, I think, is a sweet spot for this army, just because you can get Azog, you can get a couple of captains, and then you can fit in about 38 models, which is an extremely good model count for 650, and means that even if somehow Azog gets shut down, sometimes your army will just crush through an opponent's army, even without Azog, and just completely destroy it. It's certainly an extremely powerful army. And while it does have pronounced weaknesses, especially the ability to just pick a turn where you move first, like we have never seen anything like it in the history of the game. The only thing that comes close is the Palantir, and you can just cancel that with heroic moves. But with surprise attack, your opponent has to play in a certain way where they can't ever be in a position when you have that surprise attack rule that you could exploit it all. Because if you can exploit that position, you're just going to say, I'm going to do surprise attack, and then their Aragorn that they have out on the side dies, or their misplaced models get completely surrounded and killed. And just having the ability to, at any point in time, even if it looks like the game isn't going in your favor, to see that moment, and then it's not a chance that you can capitalize on it. It's guaranteed that you can capitalize on it. And being able to have that power, I think, is what makes this army so potent on the tabletop. And it's why it can perform so well. Even though, and I think as we'll see in this episode, it does have, I'd say, compared to something like Easterlings or Assault on Lothlorien, its weaknesses are a lot more pronounced, especially in the area of courage. It absolutely hates terror. And if it plays against terror, you have to play very, very specifically to be able to even attempt to win the game. But it's, other than that sort of pronounced weakness and a decent weakness to shooting as well, especially evil shooting, it's extremely powerful and will often just walk through enemy armies. If you play it at a tournament, you'll notice that oftentimes your wins will be huge like at Nova, I'm fairly sure I had the highest VP difference of everybody, and VP scored by a long shot, just because every game I was winning in a huge way because I would just absolutely crush the opposing army, that is. So all in all, it's a extremely, extremely strong force with some big weaknesses, but if you play it right, it'll take you far.
All right. Well, with that lead in, let's discuss some opposing armies.
Did I
Devin,
go over my 650 point list
oh, right.
first?
Yeah. Sorry. I forgot about that. I forgot we hadn't done that. Go back.
Yes. All right.
Hit rewind.
So going into my 650 point list. So I have Azog on the White Warg, obviously, auto take. And in his warband, I have a Fell Warg, a Gundabad Orc with Spear, Shield, and Banner, 5 Gundabads with Spears and Shields, 6 Hunter Orcs, and then I have a Hunter Orc Captain with a Fell Warg, 5 Gundabad Orcs with Spears and Shields, 6 Hunter Orcs, and then another Hunter Orc Captain, a Fell Warg, 5 Gundabad Orcs with Spears and Shields, and 5 Hunter Orcs. So all in all, it's 39 models. There are 17 Hunter Orcs and 16 Gundabad Orcs. There's a banner in there. There's 3 Fell Wargs. And other than Azog, the only heroes I have are 2 Hunter Orc captains. So a couple of key things to note. No Warhorn, no Keeper of the Dungeons. Some people swear by them. I think at 650, they both reduce their numbers by an amount that I don't find to be acceptable. So I didn't take them in this list.
Yeah. Notice you got a pretty even divide of spear with the front line as well. That's another point where some people like kind of go more heavy on the Hunter Orc side.
Yeah. I actually, in my Nova list, I actually went lighter on the Hunter Orcs. And after taking it to Nova, I really found that the Hunter Orcs are pretty much the crux of the list. I still like the backbone of having the Spear and Shield Gundabads, but I went with a 50-50 split in this instance. But I think it's totally justified to take a larger number of Hunter Orcs and to tone down on the Gundabad Orcs a little bit more.
Did you often just keep one Spear Shield deck dedicated to both your Hunter Orc captains?
Yeah. You want to be able to send a Hunter Orc captain and 2 guys, put a spear behind them, and just clobber through those 2 guys.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise the list sounds pretty logical to me. So I like it. You said you had what, 3 Fell Wargs?
3, yes.
3, okay. That's pretty much appropriate for that. So yeah, no.
Where were the other? Just out of curiosity, where were the other Fell Wargs? Or are you counting the captains on the Fell Warg as Fell Wargs?
No captains were on Fell Wargs.
Oh, they had Fell Wargs in their warbands?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there was 1 Fell Warg in each warband. The captains were not mounted. Please do not mount your captains as a PSA.
Why? Why would you tell the audience that?
Well, the reason, in case you guys didn't know, was that Hunter Orcs, the many blade special rule that gives them additional attacks, they don't get that when they're mounted. So do not mount your Hunter Orc captains. It's honestly, in my opinion, just a waste of points.
Fair enough. So Devin or Alisher, who wants to take on Devin first?
I guess, I mean, I'll go over this list. So full disclosure to the audience, actually, while Matt and Alisher made and designed their own lists, I championed Rainier, another podcast member, to build one for me. And I think it's interesting. So I'm going to make some slight tweaks to it, though, I think. And maybe you guys can decide if I'm crazy. So it seems like
you're crazy. That decided, let's move on.
So it seems like Rainier went with the strategy of I need a major deterrent against Azog. And he kind of centered his list around just, okay, what is one thing that can take Azog down while the troops kill the army? So the troops, in theory, need to be better than the hunter works backed by spears with banner sport, and then the deterrent must be so strong that it can get rid of Azog very quickly. He chose a demolition bomb. So he has a demolition team, therefore kind of restricting him to Isengard to get that. So he did Lurtz with a shield and has a Cribane with 6 scouts with shield, 2 crossbows, a pike, 2 pikes, and an Uruk-hai drum. And just to elaborate on this, note that the 6 scouts with shields are not regular Uruk-hai warriors. It seems like because Hunterworks and Gundabads have strength 4, he opted just to forego the defense 6 and just stick to defense 5, which makes perfect sense to me on the saving points spectrum. So, and since he knows he's going to fight Pitzel Guldur, he doesn't have to, flex that to multiple armies. Crossbows, kind of keeping it light, but just based on warband size, he's got 2 pikes. And then the drum, just to make a move fast, I suppose. It gives some flexibility to the list. So Vrasku's next with 6 crossbows, 2 Dunland horsemen, and 2 wildmen with axes. My assumption is the wildmen were sort of he had 10 points left over and sort of picked it. 2 Dunland horsemen he picked for having an option that if you need to throw it across the board and it got countered by the wargs, the fell wargs of the opposing side, then the horsemen can easily take them out, which I agree with. The crossbows, just maximizing them in the list. We'll get to how many shots he has. Then Gurulf with a Cribane. So that's 2 Cribane in the list so far and 2 horsemen so far. There's 6 scouts in his warband as well, 2 crossbows, 1 pike, and then he's got the demolition team. So he's got 650 points, 38 models. He's got 9 points of might, which I think is very healthy. He's got 10 crossbows, 2 Cribane, 2 cav. So the thought behind the list was he was going to use fight 4 to win fights and strength 4 to kill the defense 4 Hunterwork line. And I completely agree that would work. My kind of issue as I read the list is that there's 3 pikemen? And that's it. And there's no banner for those of you who are listening. So essentially, I have 1 die to Evan's 4. So I mean, I might get the 6, and now keep in mind that's also with even numbers. So already off the bat, based on the way this list is kind of designed, I'm like, well, Evan won this game. I'm not really feeling too confident.
I don't know about that. Well, okay, we'll let Evan comment. I really like the bomb. I really like the bomb as a counter to Azog.
I'm not mad at the bomb. The bomb makes sense to me.
Never get mad at the bomb.
Yeah, I honestly,
nothing good comes to getting mad at the bomb.
The bomb is an excellent deterrent. I think it's just okay. So there's not any real spears in the air. There's got 3. My assumption is those 3 are standing behind Guritz, Vrasku, and Lurtz. Realistically, I'm looking at my entire line being unsupported. So I think the modifications I might make is the drum, swap that out for a banner. I see far more value in having that banner support behind Lurtz, also for mission objectives potentially as well, than the ability to move fast in this list, especially against this particular opponent. I'm not really sure if what his goal is to get an extra inch. Well, no, because I don't have bows. So no, I don't really know what the drum is doing here. Okay. Yeah, so I don't get 4-inch shoot. So I mean, so the theory obviously is that we can shoot out a bunch of with crossbows, strength 4 crossbows. I should be able to shoot out a lot of Hunterworks before the lines meet. If I get 2 rounds of fire, I might get 6 to 10.
So just a thought here, Devin. Could it be the reason he doesn't have spears is he's going to have a single deep line, and those crossbows are just going to be shooting into combat? I suspect the crossbows are going to be somewhere behind the line, and if you can't get the bomb in, right? Because the bomb will also blow up a bunch of pikes. But if he can't get the bomb in, he's just going to have 10 crossbows shooting into Azog's combat every turn.
And that could work in the sense that Azog has defense 5. So I do think he's probably, I would say he's keeping some of those crossbows in reserve and just keeping them on constant shooting duty. I don't think he'll fire into the lines of regular combats, except for maybe in the cases of like where the wild men are fighting a either Azog, of course, then you can disable her combat, or with against Hunter Orcs, he can actually wound them on fours and not risk losing a valuable option. But yes, I could see certainly he would probably keep a few back just to fire an Azog's combat. I do not see him not doing that. So I don't know that foregoes an entire pipeline. Huh?
Good use of negatives there, Devin. I do not see him not doing that.
I'm sorry. I guess I'm like stumbling over my words mostly because I'm like, yeah, I mean, yes, I see him doing that, but it still doesn't mean I get no spear support.
Yeah, he could take very easily, if he doesn't want to pay the points for a pike, just take a couple orcs with spear.
Yeah. All right. Here's my modifications. Creebane. Why do I have two of them? Okay, look, I love Creebane. But if I'm gonna have already two Cav and a Creebane, then it's like, all right, get rid of a Creebane. That's 4 orcs with spears. I know they're not fight for or whatever, but they're standing behind crossbows or whatever the hell. And then maybe trade out the 2 wild men. Unless you have the Oathmaker, I don't know why I have wild men. So once again, trade that out with 2 orcs. You won't have spears.
All right. So now that you've deconstructed Rainier's list, which by the way you're stuck with, make your case.
I mean, all right. All right. Well, then let's go with a line to the line. I think Azog is going to be pretty well mitigated. I think Grolf and Lurtz and Vrasku are going to have to spend a lot of might just pummeling through that line, and they'll have to do it faster than his Hunter captains could do it through mine. I think with my Universal Defense 5 against his defense, his strength 4, he needs 5s to win me. I need 4s to win him almost across the board. So if I win combat, it's going to be painful. I can also, with my strength 4, crush through his defense 6, not crush through, but more reliably than he would like. And without Azog actually doing anything. So, and also, I don't think I would be too afraid to deploy the bomb. No, I guess, yeah, you save it for Azog. I was thinking, like, would I blow up an orc captain? Probably not, unless both of them together. Then maybe, but probably not. So, yeah, the Gurov and I would have to constantly be calling her at combats. And just with fight 5, I, can eat through it. If you're making me stuck with it, then I'm going to, obviously I don't have a banner anymore. So the pikes are going behind. They're going to go behind Gurov and they're going to go behind Lurtz. 2 pikes with Lurtz, 1 with Gurov. Gurov already has 3 attacks, so boost up. Oh, well, Lurtz has 3 now too. So yeah, either way. Then man, I don't have a lot of confidence this list is gonna work. I really don't. Can anyone make the case that this would work? Can anybody do that?
I think it could. I think it could. If it has more spears, I think it can work. I mean,
well, he's making me play it as is.
I mean, it could work, right? Whenever you have a fight advantage, like in theory, if you win fights, it can work. And you're not exactly in a situation where you can't kill. It's not like you need 6s on everything. So
if I win this game, I'm going to write a whole article on just how spears are overrated bullshit. Everybody should play with a front line.
So I think this army would actually be really powerful in a scenario where the armies started 24 inches apart.
Yeah.
Because there would be a lot of dead Hunter orcs by the time Evan's army, I think, got across the board and into combat.
If you get that 6 to 10 dead, so Evan goes from 38 optimistically down to 28.
I'm counting on 4 deaths a turn with 50% and 50% off.
Well, 10, and Vrasku needs 3s, and has a little bit of might to kind of manipulate that as well. So. Yeah. If you can get down to the 30 or fewer range, your 38 models can definitely do work. You're probably going to end up I could envision shielding a reasonable amount with the scouts just to keep them alive. And then utilizing your 2, maybe just the 3 of your, now Lurtz probably wants to keep shooting into Azog's combat. So your 2 attack heroes.
Vrasku, you mean Vrasku? So you're saying you would keep, instead of sending Vrasku in on killing duty, you would You would actually keep him shooting into like, because I would feel like the bomb should be.
It depends. Like I guess you have some versatile like options in that if the bomb is in a really bad position, like Verascu can keep a little bit of pressure. If the bomb is in a great position, then Verascu's going into combat. Like the benefit is as well, like your Urukai heroes being, like your Urukai heroes are going to kill more consistently than the Hunter Orc heroes because the Hunter Orc captains they tie with the Uruks.
Yeah.
Well, and your heroes can kill the Hunter or cap.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Much easier. So like you're not going to do much against, Azog, but like the idea is like nobody can do a lot against Azog.
Except the bomb.
Except
the bomb. And actually, like I don't hate the bomb as
once again, no critique against the bomb. I not at all. I think that's a good strategy.
We all know your feelings about the bomb.
With the bomb, like, does it dismounts him before it does wounds?
There's no dismount. It's just wounds.
Oh, it doesn't dismount.
It doesn't knock you down.
Can you choose? Does the warg and Azog then take hits, or does the model?
Yes.
So can you choose?
The warg will most likely die.
First? Can you choose the warg first, though?
I mean, I guess
you could. I don't know why it would matter.
Well, the drop Throne Rider,
the fate and the might.
Yeah.
Because if he gets all of those things, you have to wound him 5 times to ensure that he dies. If you don't do that, like if you get rid of the warg, you have to wound him 4 times, which is feasible, like 50% chance of that, to ensure that Azog is dead.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know if the rules cover that, like who you need to resolve the wounds on first in that circumstance.
Yeah, I don't think it covers that at all. I think it just simply says on both horse and rider take wounds. I imagine it's a situation that the rules writers didn't even think about when writing it.
You didn't think they saw this coming?
Yeah, if I were to rule it, to be honest, it leans much more heavily that it's simultaneous. I know that sounds weird because then how do you resolve it?
You have to roll two handfuls of dice, one at each. I think you would if it's simultaneous. And Devin, I kind of agree with you that I don't know how you split the baby otherwise, right?
I guess you don't, because it's automatic wounds. It just happens. Like, I guess you don't have to roll separately. It happens. And the idea is both are wounded at the same time. So if like the warg were to just die, well, it would be dead. So then you can't benefit from things that you can't. Like you can't
put the guy in a situation though where he has to say, should I spend this point of fate on the warg or should I reserve it for Azog? I think you're right. I think you got to roll it all at once. It's not like the explosion is going to hit the warg first.
Yeah. Okay.
The only downside also is Evan can easily mitigate the bomb by kind of keeping Azog away from his own people. Because remember, if I can't blow up 2 of his people, I can't even blow it up at all. I always have to target 2 people, which is, it's a gimmicky, in my opinion, poorly worded rule in order to prevent a certain type of counterplay, but it exists. And so, I have to kill or be in range of one of Evan's other models. So I imagine he can just kind of put Azog away from the line a little bit. There's not a lot I have that can deal with him. But then again, you are isolating him. So
I love that Rainier's list that he very likely just threw together last minute has caused such a rich discussion.
Yeah, all right. I guess I'll sort of close this out with my thoughts on it, and then we can move on to some other lists. Rainier, I love you very much. I think Pits of Doguldur.
I sense a butt coming.
Yeah, if I were playing Pits of Doguldur and I come up on this list in a tournament, I would not be unhappy to play against it. Because your guys just, once combat hits, your guys just die. Like, sure, if you want to, you can keep your 10 guys plus Vrasku out of combat and shoot into combat with Azog. Go right ahead. That means that you have an extremely limited number of models in combat. And that means I'm going to kill you quicker with the rest of my models. Like Devin just said, I can just keep Azog away from the rest of my army, and there's not much he can do about it. He can shoot into that combat, sure, but I just explained as to why shooting into the combat when you're in combat is a bad idea. Um, Even if it's 24-inch deployment, first off, to the death, I win because I sit at the back of the board with my banner and I win the game that way.
Well, I'll just shoot
Um,
it. Keep in mind though, I would shoot at you, and remember, every turn when you just stand there and I just shoot, and you stand there, I shoot. That moves
there's the
fast.
problem.
I
The
don't think you can
problem
literally do that.
I think I can. The problem is your crossbows can't move and shoot. So there's a lot of different tactics I can use to mitigate stuff like that. And because I can take my Gundabad orcs and put them in front of my Hunter orcs, you're not killing as many of them as you may assume. Even with Verasku, I'd say maximum with the 24-inch range, you're getting 3 turns of shooting. If I double march, um, maybe 2, depending. And in that period of time, you're killing probably 10
10.
models. And that's a decent amount. That's not enough. It's because you don't have a banner and you don't have spears, you're just going to get crushed anyways. Like I could just do a one-on-one fight with my Hunter Orcs versus your Urukai, and I would win in basically every fight, and I would kill in most fights, right? 55% chance of killing. So just having fight 4 and strength 4 is good when you can actually take advantage of that with attacks. And because you don't have that volume of attacks that you need, it's just not going to end well, unfortunately.
That's fine.
And the heroes are not going to be enough to really change, because sure, you can go in and try and call heroic combats with your heroes. By the way, if any of your heroes loses a fight ever, they are taking at least 1 or 2 wounds and maybe dying, because I've got if especially if they're going into 2 models, I've got like 6 dice on them, and then if I win, I do 2-3 wounds and just kill them like that, right? And the Hunter captains can just go into basic Urukai scouts and chop through 2 of them in 1 turn, maybe 1 of them. So yeah, I think this list doesn't do great against Spitz. The bomb I like, but being able to mitigate that with Azog staying out of the way, I don't think this is the list.
Everybody likes the bomb. It's not to like about a bomb.
Well, I
All
mean,
right.
we are American, so that only makes
I think the
sense.
sad fact is all 4 of us voted in Evan's favor here. I don't think there's any tiebreaker.
Renee's
right,
gonna have to
Alisher.
like challenge you to restore his honor.
Yeah. All right, Alisher, why don't you take a stab at this?
All right, so I have the mighty Assault on Lothlorien. I did throw this together, so I could be slightly off, but generally speaking, it's Musger with a bat, 3 orc trackers, 6 orcs with spear. 1 of them will have a banner. 1 warg rider, then an orc captain on warg with 3 trackers, 6 orcs with spear. Druzag with 4 spiders, a bat, 6 prowlers, 4 goblins with bow, and then a goblin shaman with 4 prowlers, 3 goblins with bow and spear. So the total comes to 13 bows, 10 throwing weapons. There are 10 prowlers total, and 46 models with 6 might. So the general thinking in this, again, we're kind of coming back to the whole like sitting and shooting. I think that I outnumber you by 8, which is nice. I think this shooting, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's a little bit dicey to consider, like, is this better shooting than the Isengard list? I would say you probably get similar effects. I have 3 more bows, but then the throwing weapons are going to be more useful once combat hits. I have the bats, which are mobile. I don't know that they're going to be amazingly productive against Azog. The base sizes of everything is just going to get really challenging. But to some extent, because Azog has a larger base, that does mean that it's more challenging to make sure that he's protected on all fronts relative to a normal cav base. I have the Shaman is predominantly, the Shaman and Musger play an interesting kind of two-man punch, because in theory, it's less so because you have resistance of magic. Musger can just be annoying with either Wither or Transfix. Of course, you have resistance to magic and you have a lot of resources, but because Musger is so cheap and he has such a great consistency with his spells because of the reroll, it's very likely possible that over the course of the game, I put Azog in some form of an annoying situation, which very well could slow him down. The spiders, because they outfight your models, and because I have a banner, I can be a little bit more manipulative with them to make sure that they are kind of operating as a hammer as needed. Obviously, I have to be very careful with them because one lost combat is likely going to result in a dead spider, but because they're so fast, I can be a little bit more flexible with what combats they're actually in. The Warg Rider and the Orc Captain, I just assume they're gonna, hopefully slowly get through things. I tie you on fight largely everywhere, especially I can be a little bit more specific with that with the Orc Spears, since I do have 12 of them. And then the same idea, because I have more models overall, if I want to try to, put 4, Orc trackers in a situation where they're doing Hail Mary shots into an Azog combat, I can do that without feeling like I'm over investing into it. But of course, they are also fight 3, so if they need to just sacrifice themselves, they can. But I'm thinking like I have 46 models. If I can get some reasonable turns of shooting, let's say even I bring you down by 6 to 32, then all of a sudden I'm outnumbering you by 14, which I feel a little confident about, especially as I'm getting traps or surrounds. I'm getting +1 to wound, so that's added convenience. I also think the Orc Prowlers, or the Goblin Prowlers, like I need 5s to kill your Gundabad. I'm sorry, 4s to kill your Gundabad spears, and I need. No, did you put shields on your Gundabad spears or no? Oh, okay, so I need 5s on your Gundabad shields. I need 4s on your Orc or your Hunter Orcs. So I think overall, like I'm able to add consistent pressure. And if in some situation like Azog's, originally I was thinking to throw a list for Army of Lake Town, and I thought Bilbo was a good counter to Azog, but I feel like anyone who like knows how to play the game well will never be around Bilbo enough for me to really pose a great threat. So I think the bats add a pressure to where you always have to feel like you're on guard. Otherwise, I can send a bat your way. And because I outnumber you, I can hold things up for a turn or two in such a way that I don't know that I could probably, if you opened up or positioned yourself poorly with Azog, I could capitalize.
Evan, what say you?
This is actually an interesting matchup.
You're that Rainier, you're
And-
not interesting.
I mean, we had such a long discussion. Like, I think
Yeah, I think
whatever,
you just
but the bomb really had us all going. Like, wow, that's a good bomb. Right?
Yeah, where's your bomb, Alisher? Everybody loves a
Yeah,
bomb.
I think Alisher, this list would have done a lot better if you had put a bomb in it.
If I
So
had
it's a
to
little
put
bit
a
of a
bomb,
mistake
yeah.
there.
If you
Put a
liked
bomb
it,
in
you
your
could have put a
legions,
bomb
dude.
in it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the list starts with assault upon something. So I think I can get a bomb.
That's the American national anthem there, Dad. Shooting's good. You're gonna kill probably similar amounts of models to what the crossbows did. The only change being that you shoot 18 inches, which means that you're getting 2 turns of shooting maximum, maybe 1. So that's probably 5 or 6, I'd say, before combat hits, which gives you a good model deficit. Not deficit. I have a model deficit. Problem is combat.
Mhm.
When I was talking earlier about if I win a fight, I kill a guy. If I win a fight against you, I may well kill two guys
Mhm.
if I charge two guys with my hunter or gun to bad spear support. Um, and my concern is you're relying heavily on your throwing weapons at that point.
Mhm.
And if prowlers are great when they win combats, but they're very bad at winning combats. And I think that if I charge them, even if they go into combat, throw, and then fight, I'm just going to wipe most of them out on the first turn, and then your ability to do damage is just going to be completely lost.
Mhm.
Um, and just the that's the problem I have with both your list and Devin's list is the shooting is great. You guys can generally mitigate Azog pretty well. Because with Devin's list, I need to do some weird stuff and get him out on his own. With your list, I need to keep him pretty conservative, just so you never have the chance to be able to one-shot him, right? But when combat hits, those two lists do not do enough against the Hunter Orcs with Gun to Bad Spear supporting to be able to survive in combat. And the Hunter Orc captains as well, like as long as I don't let like a bat go into them or something like that, or I guess a spider that's enraged, they're just going to kill two models every turn consistently. Um, and because of that, I think
Well, I
that
don't. To
this
some extent,
matchup,
if you keep throwing the hunter or orcs into combat, yes, if you win, you're killing things. But if you lose, you're also getting wounded very easily. The benefit of this list is that I can play. I'm to some extent, I guess I'm in my knowledge of it. I'm relying on my kind of watching Samir play. And the interesting thing with the Prowlers is because in many matchups, especially this one, arguably their throwing weapons are more valuable than their combat prowess because they evaporate so quickly. You're able to have a very long line of combat where you're requiring your opponent, if you position well, anyways, to have to spread out themselves pretty well. And then you're using the prowlers in a way to attack like back rank supports as is convenient to do so. So you are right. This army does evaporate very well, or very quickly anyways, but it does the +1 to wound, like it makes it dicey. So I don't know if this is entirely consistent, but if you throw, you know, a captain into two prowlers and I put supports behind both of them and say I have a banner, like if you win, great, you kill two prowlers. If you lose, you very easily could lose a captain in a turn.
yeah, just my concern is that I am going to be winning so many combats. That's my problem I have, which is the problem in general when you play a fight two or fight three army against this sort of army where I have a ton of attacks at low fight.
Mhm.
I'm just going to be winning the vast majority of combats, even if I'm forced to spread out, which usually I'd say I'm not, especially if turn one I march, turn two I march, and then I can sort of set up in a position where I can at least partially piecemeal the army, and then it might take one additional turn for the rest of the army to get in. But it's already too late in that point because if I am even equal numbers in combat, it's going to be an absolute bloodbath. Because if you can't surround me, you wound me on either fives or sixes, unless you're using prowlers, which are even worse at winning the fight. Um, and I am either equaling you in fight value or I'm beating you in fight value. And when I win the fight, I'm killing a guy, right? I'm killing a guy 75% of the time if I just have one hunter orc in on one guy.
Mhm.
And if I can get like 2 isolated goblin archers with a Hunrork and a spear behind it and break the spears off, on average, I am killing those 2 goblin archers, or at least one.
Mhm.
And that's where this army really concerns me. I think there are certainly matchups where Assault on Lothlorien can do pretty well. But if I remember that it's actually part of the reason I brought it to Nova was I think it does, compared to a lot of other lists, it does quite well against Assault on Lothlorien, because while you're always winning a lot of combats against Assault on Lothlorien because of their low fight value, at least initially when they can't get their numbers to bear. And so a lot of army lists can't really capitalize on winning those combats, can't really kill guys consistently, but pits can.
Mhm.
Pits will kill basically every time if they win a combat.
Mhm.
And I remember seeing a game where Dad played against Avery and just watching like the Assault on Lothlorien warriors just sort of evaporate
Mhm.
when they were fighting the Hunter Orcs. So I think
By the way,
the
for
matchup
record,
is okay, but it's shaky.
Mhm.
by the way, for the record, that was the game that I ended up winning because Thrain botched his die roll on the last turn. We were playing Fog of War. Thrain botched his die roll on the last turn, like killed the other guy, the other Azog's Legion guy that was sitting on Avery's objective, and then moved, moved off the objective so that he couldn't get points for Thrain the Broken, and then Thrain killed the guy that was still there. So, Thrain. All right. All right. Any more discussion of Alice, or do you want me to take my attempt at it here?
I mean, pretty much Evan covered like all of it. The main thing I would be concerned about is the fight value difference. So, I, you know, I don't think Alisher has no chance here. But if I had to call bets,
I mean, one thing I will say is, I mean, I can't that because I have played this particular matchup before, and it's not necessarily a bad if you are in an objective scenario, for example, it's not necessarily a bad matchup because Azog goes somewhere, and then the rest of your army just goes someplace else, and you've got enough figures that basically Azog goes in and kills some stuff, and then you're shooting especially if you can get archers into places where the Pits of Dol Guldur army can't get at them. Like I think at that point I had archers like standing on top of tents, shooting down into fights and stuff like that all around them. The tents became like little turrets. And if you get archers in positions where they can like just consistently get shots off, you'll just start killing the Hunter Orcs, and you can kind of win the game that way. But you don't necessarily want to fight this one heads up with Army of Lothlorien, but you can get into a position where it's about positioning. You'll lose a good chunk of your army to Azog and his buddies, but he'll lose a good chunk of his army to your shooting. So, all righty, we ready for me?
Mhm.
Okay, so let's see. So my army is the Return of the King, Legendary Legion. So this gets me 3 things. It gets me a free Anduril with Aragorn, which is actually surprisingly not useful in this scenario, or in this particular matchup. But if it's free, it's for me. It gets me basically a 6-inch banner from Aragorn on all the dead models that come with this, all the spirit models, which is very useful. And then it gets me a Harbinger of Evil from the King of the Dead, which is incredibly useful against this particular army. So the army itself is Aragorn, and with Aragorn is 1 Rider of the Dead, 5 warriors with shield, warriors of the dead with shield, and 6 warriors of the dead with shield and spear. And warband number 2 is the King of the Dead. He also has a Rider of the Dead with him, and he has 5 warriors of the dead with shield, and 6 warriors of the dead with shield and spear. So it comes out to 26 models. So I'm going to be outnumbered. I don't really care very much because Evan's not going to be charging me very often. The way I think this army is going to fight is there's going to be a line up front with warriors of the dead in front, warriors of the dead with spear in the second rank, with a couple of kind of like one base width, but not wide enough to get a cavalry wide through holes in that line. That if I want to, I can send either the King of the Dead through or Aragorn through to kill ordinary soldiers or hunter orc captains. But most of the time, the King of the Dead and Aragorn are going to be hiding behind this wall and picking off targets of opportunity in some place where Azog's not going to get near them. And the Riders of the Dead will probably stay back with them. So that if stuff does, kind of lap around the flanks of this line, the Riders of the Dead can handle them, Aragorn can handle them, or the King of the Dead can handle them. And then the rest of the army is just going to go forward and probably put some guys into Azog, and hopefully I can, win priority with Aragorn's free might, in which case Azog's not charging. And then even if assuming he wins the fight, and he probably will, he still, if he wants to get his free heroic combats off, needs to kill the figures he's fighting on 6s, because he's strength 5. And then the rest of my army is going to kind of pick off in one-on-one combats, or perhaps surround one side of Evan's line, because I can use heroic marches to kind of get around it, and start picking off hunter orcs, which they wound on 3s, or Gundabad orcs, which they wound on 4s. And in return, his Evan stuff is going to be wounding me on 6s. So that's basically the plan.
No, I actually really like this counter to his list. I mean, if he gets a single hunter orc onto 1 Man of the Dead, he's got 3 attacks, and with a banner, 4 attacks to your 1. And it didn't hear, how many spears did you say you had?
It's half spears, so I can.
It's half spears, okay.
So I can
Not too
put a
bad.
spear behind, and Aragorn's
And
probably
Aragorn's a benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, then that's not bad.
Yeah.
So then, and you said you're tied combat, right? Like, as a
it's going to be fight 3 all the way across.
I think 3 dice. You have a 50% chance of getting a 6 and rolling 3 dice, which, I mean, we say that casually, but I know in actuality it never works out that way, or doesn't seem to. But I think he can. I mean, so first, this list I think has the best chance of winning. I think that the fact that he only needs 1 hunter orc into a fight with one of your guys, the terror isn't as concerning. It's different than like a Black Numenorian line where like you have a lot of models, but here he can lock up your guys just by getting at least a majority of these combats in. And it's not like you don't want to charge. So you really want him to go first, fail a whole bunch of terror tests, and you respond.
And then I go with 2 on 1 hunter orc. So I end up with 5 dice against his 3.
You're 10 models less than him.
I am about 10 models less than him.
Yeah.
What is it? 26 models?
26 models.
13 less.
Yeah. This is, the odds of kill. I mean, it's the fact that he does have enough attacks, 3 dice. He probably, if he makes at least some dent in the dead, he could gain momentum. So it really just depends on how fast you're killing his stuff off before he gets some lucky dice rolls to knock out dead warriors. And you said your mitigation strategy for Azog is just Aragorn and the King of the Dead?
No, I just put a warrior in.
Just put a warrior in front of him. Yep.
Or even
so just
2, because he's not going to heroic combat off of 2. I mean, if he's charging, he might, but if he's not charging, which because he may even fail his charge test trying to go in. Mm-hmm. If he's not charging, he's not going to heroic combat off of 2 warriors. And if he loses,
he only needs.
Azog needs 6s to wound the warriors.
5 on 8. Yeah.
Because everybody.
Okay. I would say your chances are, the chances are he's not heroic combating off it. I think that if he gets 1-6, he will, and the other one's a 5 or 4. 4 might be tough, but I mean, spending 2 points might to kill 2 men of the dead. That's rough. Aragorn will crush Azog as soon as he runs out of might. So
as soon as Azog's out of might between the King of the Dead and Aragorn.
Yeah, that's over.
Yeah.
That's interesting. If I had to place bets on that, I mean, obviously, like I like to place bets more on the player than the actual army itself. So, I mean, even both of you are obviously skilled opponent.
But you've always liked me better,
though,
Devin.
I know, right? I mean, that's the first time. Yeah, I guess just to say,
Devin, I'll
my result,
PayPal you
I'll
a
say,
20 if you say I win.
There you go. I'll go ahead and go with the return of in most scenarios, they're either mobility based or numbers based, in which case this army has a problem. And so that's the one reason I would honestly probably have to go with Evan. And it's just on scenario. In a straight fight, yeah, I think that the evidence is there, but I'd wonder, I mean, with no courage, if you break him, then he's screwed. I'm just running through all the scenarios in my head. Sorry. You have more. He has more mobility.
While you're running through, why don't we hear from Evan?
I'll just go with Evan. But go ahead. Go ahead, Alistair. I'll say Evan still on this one, but just barely, just because of the scenarios and the mobility requirements and the spread out requirement of scenarios, which then takes people away from Aragorn's banner range. It moves you around a little bit more than you would like as a bubble army. So I'm going to go with Evan strictly on scenarios. But in a straight up fight, I think Matt wins. So that's what I'll say.
What's your thought, Alistair?
And
you don't have to have one.
It's such odd lit, like, usually when we like come together with like an assortment of lists, there are consistencies. But like AOL is played a lot, but Return of the King is such an out there, like a lot of people play Return of the King, but you don't really like think of it as this like grand like counter list, but it does. Now, so I've played Return of the King a reasonable amount at events. I've played against it as well with Army of Laketown, and I have beaten it with Army of Laketown. So I'm just using that as a low courage reference, but of course they outfight. I don't know. It's hard for me to like what 100 orcs do really well in the face of low courage is that, whereas any other model, if they're one attack by themselves, 100 orc obviously is 2 attacks. So like it feels like 2 models worth of things. So you don't need as many of them to get in. Needing 6s just makes it such an awkward, like kind of dicey situation. But then also the Gundabad orcs that he has are courage 3, so like he could theoretically have some flexibility there. Yeah, it would be a whole lot easier if you had Legolas in the list, but you can't
fit him
in at 650. If you had Legolas in the list, of course it would make more sense. I certainly think you can beat Pits of Dol Guldur with that. It really just depends on how well Aragorn. I think it just boils down to how well does Aragorn do. Which it's like if Aragorn goes into 100 orcs and is picking up 400 orcs a turn, great. That's going to be way more impressive than Azog, who might get 3 maximum. Maybe like between 1 and 3 models at most. I can't imagine him killing 4 very easily. But then if Aragorn loses a fight, he dies almost. So
yeah, I don't think Aragorn is too important to the list, I think, to send him into 100 orcs. Although he is pretty safe because he's got his 3 attacks plus if you can back him up with a spear that gets a banner, then gets 5 dice.
You do also have a 6-inch banner, which actually is quite. I think that is a large.
Yeah, I think the 6-inch banner. I mean, that's why I'm saying Aragorn. I think Aragorn just goes in and kills like 1 guy a turn, and then But I think really what you want Aragorn for is to kill off his hunter orc captains.
Yeah, that's fair. Although it kind of goes
And the same with
against
the
my
King of the Dead
intuition
too.
here, I think I think Return of the King is better in the matchup. It's really weird, and it's real. Like in my mind, this is kind of a 50-50 split. But like, I think Matt can play wide because he has, a 12-inch Harbinger of Evil. He doesn't have to play narrow if he doesn't want to. He could also choose to play narrow and castle up if he wanted to. He has a large banner. He has plenty of spear support to be able to make sure that he's having dice in the fight. If he wins against the hunter orc, he needs 3s to kill them, as opposed to 6s from the hunter orcs. At Aragorn, I agree, like can be a little bit more of like a not an assassin per se, but he can be more like specific with who he's going after because he is the banner. And the King of the Dead, the King of the Dead's the King of the Dead. He can just participate in regular fights, and try to pick up a couple of guys a turn. He's pretty tanky. So I think Return of the King could do it.
All right, Evan, what say you?
Rainier, what do you think?
Rainier, you can't possibly imagine how much discussion we had from your list.
Did you guys
Yeah,
talk
I
about
know.
Yeah,
we had a very long discussion about your list.
Yeah, I bet half of it was like it sucks, and the other half were like, no, he used to be a good player. Like we got to give him the benefit of the doubt.
it was a strange combination of the bomb is brilliant and the rest is the product of a fevered mind.
It's exactly what happened. If no one can see the thread of like our chat, it's like I can't join. I have a fever. I gotta take medicine. Oh wait, the medicine's not kicking in because I have a fever. Let me join. So yeah,
We knew, like, I felt like when you created it, you instantly thought bomb, and the rest just was, like thrown
well,
in there as you
there is some thought behind it. So basically, I knew that
Yeah.
Evan would have strength 4. So I was like, why put defense 6? Just put defense 5 and save the points. And then I realized also 650, you can't really do much with 650. So let's just throw some crap in there.
Well, so okay, we all actually got what you were thinking. The only thing we didn't understand was why no spears and no banner? Why a drum instead of a banner?
Yeah, I wanted to like roll the dice hypothetically. No,
You're actually rolling very little dice. Is the problem.
That's the issue, is you're rolling
Yeah.
1 die and I'm rolling like 4.
Yeah. Yeah, I would if I put more thought into it, throw a banner, throw a spear, get maybe around 34 models. But the bomb, yeah, what did you guys think? Well, I guess I'll have to watch this
Well, the
one.
bomb, we like I said, we liked it. It just was. It was the spears. It was
The
that
bomb
was the
caused so much discussion. It really was like the bomb is brilliant. Of course, why didn't anyone else think to put a bomb in against Azog? And then it's like, but the rest of the list kind of stinks, man.
So actually, Rainier, in the Masters event at Articon, Jay Acharya beat Sean Lang, who had Pits of Guldur, and Jay Acharya had the Assault on Helm's Deep Legendary Legion, and he blew up Azog. Though he also, of course, had 2 ballistas and more crossbows than you did. So I think if you were going for something to beat Pitts, I think in general, even though it is nerfed, the Assault on Helm's Deep is probably a bit more effective.
Yeah,
That's a fair point. I mean, I think even just one ballista to keep Azog honest.
Yeah. And I mean, the ballista is just going to chew through troops whenever it hits, right?
Yeah.
And I guess we have a final vote on whether or not
Oh,
Matt.
and
would-
I actually
Still
I
haven't
should
heard.
probably talk about the Army of the Dead
Yeah.
matchup as well.
Yeah.
So when I went into this recording, I was thinking of 3 lists that are probably the most threatening to Pitts. And generally they're very terror focused, because that I think is Pitts's biggest weakness, and that is Mordor with a bunch of black numbs and a ring wraith in there, maybe multiple ring wraiths depending. And Angmar, and to a slightly lesser extent, some list with Círdan in it. Those three were the big ones where I was like, this is going to be very tough for me to play.
Then you read mine and you were like, wow, that tops it off.
And I was actually quite surprised that none of you guys picked those lists, because if I were to make a list to beat my list, I would have taken one of those. And actually, when Dad pulled out this list, I was like, oh yeah, that list sucks. But in this particular circumstance, it actually would do pretty well. And
Sorry
yeah,
to all the
that's-
diehard Return of the King players out there who have
That-
really been trying to make it go.
So the Return of the King is
Funny because people
I
used
love
to
you,
say that
Return
was
of the King
broken.
players very much. We did used to say Return of the King was broken.
People
I
did
don't
say that.
that's not it's not. But I think it is definitely much better at higher points levels, which this is not. However, it still hits the boxes that I am afraid of the most, which is it has Harbinger and it has Terror, and it's got at least some sort of threat to Azog. I mean, obviously, it's not reliable because Aragorn is not a bomb, and Aragorn is not an angry spider in bat. But at least there is a threat present with Azog where I can't just play him super recklessly. What makes this list more manageable than those three big threats that I talked about before is that its model count is so low, which means that even though so my hunter orcs are down to courage 1, which means I think out of the 36 possibilities on 2 dice, 10 of them pass the courage test, which is less than a 1/3 chance, which is not good at all charging. So I cannot play in a traditional way. I can't just throw my guys at his guys and expect to win because I simply will not. Which means that when I play this game, it's going to come down a lot to the scenario, and how I can use the finer points of the scenario to be able to either pull a draw or pull a win. And I'm really starting from a losing position because I cannot engage with the list. And thankfully, another helpful part of his list is that he doesn't have shooting, which means I don't have an incentive to engage him unless I'm playing something like Hold Ground or something like that, which means very counterintuitively to what you would usually see with the Pits of Dol Guldur list, I will be running away a lot. I'll be doing a lot of repositioning, a lot of putting Azog into one guy, calling a heroic combat, and then running away. And it's going to be a very technical game, and it's going to be a very challenging game. I think it's going to be a lot of playing the objectives. For example, if I hit something like to the death, playing extremely conservatively and running away when I can because I have a banner and he doesn't. And then there are some scenarios that are going to be very challenging. Hold Ground is going to be extremely challenging. Lords of Battle is also going to be quite challenging. So I don't think the matchup is as bad as it may appear like on the surface, because I mean I can't charge him, right? But I think there's a lot of counterplay if you play smart. However, I think it's still favorable to the Army of the Dead just because there's no way an engagement with them would win.
Not consistent. Like that is like I don't think this is something that you can
Like no way. You just need slight momentum if you get a few kills on some good charges.
The problem is it is extremely challenging to capitalize on those kills because charging is so challenging. And I had that same problem when I played against Angmar in the final round of Nova, is I just could not charge him. So I was never able to even generate momentum to be able to capitalize. And I was able to win that because I played Seize the Prize, and Seize the Prize is a dumb scenario, but it was a brutal game, and really showed how problematic terror is for this army.
Right. Shall we hold a vote then?
Indeed.
All right. So Rainier, I'm sorry, but we're gonna have to exclude you since you didn't actually hear. Well, you didn't really hear the armies, but we're gonna put you to the side for a second. But all right, so Devin, you started. So who's your vote for?
Who's going to be, of all three of us, who's going to be Evan?
Right.
And I can't choose Evan winning all 4 games.
Correct. You have to pick.
Devin, you have so little faith in us, man.
It's the best opponent. Because remember,
Devin's
Matt.
like, there's no point in even voting. It's just
Matt's army is clearly has the best shot. Well, against this particular army.
All right, Alisher, go ahead.
Yeah. I want to, like, in a joking way, vote for Rainier, but like it's such a bad choice. I can't even like ingest.
You can't even entertain it as a funny.
I would feel so foolish to say it that I can't. No, sorry, Rainier. I'll go with Matt for sure. I think I like to see Return of the King in this list in general. And I think terror is such, of all the things in this game that I hate to have to play into, terror is without a doubt one of them.
Thank God it's not many armies that have it though. So
well, like you feel like you have even if you have a high courage army, you feel like you're good. And then like Devin and I play a practice game where he failed 3 ghosts in a row against my Thranduil's Halls. Like it's so irritating, and especially more so in this one. So for sure I'll go with Return of the King.
All right. Well, I'm gonna, at a pure self-interest, considering if I vote for somebody else, I at least raise the possibility that I would lose because Evan would vote for him and tie. And I know Evan's going to have an interest since he has to face off with a victor in getting a weaker opponent. I'm going to vote for myself. So I'm going to put it out of reach. But so that's 3 votes for me, and then Evan's vote to go. Just for the record, Evan, what's your vote?
I'm gonna vote for Rainier out of spite. No, I'm gonna vote for your list, Dad. Because I think Rainier's list and Alisher's lists work to exploit a weakness that I don't think is as big as a lot of people may perceive, which is the shooting weakness. And I really think because you have the heroic marches and you have the defense 6 gun to bad orcs, and your damage when you engage is so good that I think it is very possible to be able to take heavy shooting like that and still have a very good chance of winning. And I think Dad's army, while it is in fact Army of the Dead and it has like 0 models in it, still has the crux of what I think is the biggest fear of the Pits of Dol Guldur, which is terror, especially terror that's backed up by Harbinger of Evil.
All right.
It's like it pains you to admit that Return of the King is a good list in certain circumstances, Evan. It is a good list.
Every time I play against it, I feel like even if my matchup on paper against terror isn't that great, I always feel like I win for like some reason or another. And when my matchup against terror is good, I just walk over them. I just feel like the Warriors of the Dead are too expensive for what you get for them.
Yeah.
But that is another discussion for a completely different episode.
I should have done my list, Alisher, the one that me and you practiced the game with. I forgot about that one.
You should have done that list. You should have prepared, Devin. Huh?
Should have done that.
You should just have books on you at all times.
Should have just. Oh man, I need.
Thank
Well,
you.
actually, so if we do this map one in the next episode, then and we roll King of the Hill, should we just roll again? Or have the shortest episode ever? Or what is it? King of the Hill.
Contest of Champions.
No. The one where you gotta maelstrom the
Ground.
battle to get to the center.
Oh,
Hold
hold
ground. Thank
Yeah,
you.
hold ground.
King of the
Oh,
Hill.
oh,
I don't
that.
know why I said King though.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's King of the Hill, basically.
Yeah. So, all right.
So now we get Iverson Bowl Part 2.
We got Iverson Bowl Part 2. Revenge. This is Evan's chance for revenge.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, guys. Good to see you all. And everybody, thanks for joining us.
Mhm.
See you guys.